What I'm going to describe are just a few basic staple foods that are used by people around the world and some simple food preparation techniques which any American can adopt to have a much healthier diet. And if I can do this, anybody can, because I'm a terrible cook. You ever wonder why you're always craving fatty, sugary foods? It's because our bodies need fats and sugar. The problem is that we eat it in the unhealthiest form possible. We eat potato chips and donuts and candy. In traditional societies, they eat a lot of nuts and dried fruit. It's very high in fat and sugar, but it's also extremely healthy. The easiest thing anyone can do to improve their diet is stop eating junk food and just start using dried fruit and nuts as a snack instead. Now I know a lot of people are saying, oh, that doesn't taste as good as donuts. But actually, if you experiment around, you'll find that after a while it does taste better than junk food. You can get dried fruit that's even higher in sugar than any junk food, and you can get nuts that are higher in fat than any junk food. Sometimes I throw in dark chocolate chips because I like the taste, and I think that dark chocolate's a fairly healthy food. It's higher in antioxidants than almost any other food. I'm not sure why it's gotten such a bad rap. So that's my number one tip for improving diet. You'll remove all the unhealthy substances in your junk food, like the white flour, the sugar, the hydrogenated oil, and you'll be greatly increasing the healthy nutrients that you intake, like omega-3 fatty acids and antioxidants from the fruit and nuts. It's also very easy. It costs about the same as eating junk food, and you can eat an entire meal of just that. Now, a lot of people may be saying, oh, I'll gain too much weight if I eat all of those nuts that are high in fat. Well, personally, I try to eat most of the nuts raw because I think it's healthier to eat unheated fats to begin with. And if weight's an issue for you, I've never seen anybody who was able to be overweight eating mostly raw food. The number two simple healthy thing that Americans have completely forgotten about, but others around the world eat as their staple food, is beans and rice. I know in another video I pointed out that beans and rice aren't part of a Paleolithic diet, and you can watch my other video on diet to learn a little more about paleo diet. So I don't eat a lot of beans and rice, but I do think that people are evolved to be able to handle, some Neolithic foods like beans and rice. And also the way that traditional people around the world prepare beans and rice is very different from how Americans do. In the first place, Americans don't even eat much beans and rice. We tend to overprocess our grains and make them into things like pasta. So by preparing beans and rice in the traditional manner, they're much healthier, and you remove some of the hemagglutins and gluten, which is a problem, as I pointed out in one of my other videos. So the traditional way to prepare beans and rice is to soak them first. You just drop them in water overnight, and they soak, and they become more digestible, and a lot of the toxins, such as the hemagglutins, are partially removed. They also cook a lot quicker, which is a big issue for people who are cooking with firewood in the rest of the world. I just wanted to point out briefly that this only works with whole, untreated rice and beans that would normally start to sprout when they're soaked in water. If it's white rice or preheated beans like you have in a lot of stores that aren't going to sprout, then it doesn't do any good to soak them. As far as tips for cooking beans and rice once they're soaked like that, as I said, I'm not a great cook. I mostly just boil them with garlic and put in some spices like coriander and cumin, and maybe mix in some sauteed onions, but other people I'm sure can find much better recipes. So that would probably be my number two recommendation for a fairly simple, fairly healthy food. It takes an hour or so to prepare, but you can prepare several days worth at once. It's also very minimally processed, very inexpensive, and certainly a lot healthier than the foods that Americans are eating as staples, such as white flour, cheese, and meat. Another staple food worldwide, especially in the older, healthier cultures like the Afro-Asiatic groups, is root vegetables. Now, we do eat a fair amount of root vegetables in the United States. The problem is that we eat them almost exclusively as potatoes fried at high temperatures in soybean oil or hydrogenated oil, so we've turned a healthy food into a very unhealthy one. In traditional societies, they do eat a lot of root vegetables, but they prepare it in a healthy way. They often boil it and then turn it into something like mashed potatoes, or sometimes people will make something like potato salad, and sometimes they're sauteed slightly and then steamed the rest of the way. So there are a lot of healthy ways to prepare root vegetables. Again, I'm not a great cook. I generally tend to saute them slightly with onions and then steam them the rest of the way and throw in some vegetables like cabbage. But I'm sure other people can find better recipes than me. It is a very simple, very healthy food, though, in my opinion. People have been eating root vegetables for tens of thousands of years, and we're very well adapted to them compared to other Neolithic foods like beans and rice. Next is the soft drinks that Americans intake so much of. This is one of the simplest things that anyone can do to improve their diet, is just to stop drinking soft drinks. They're high in acidity, they're high in sugar, they have caffeine, they're just very unhealthy. In traditional societies, they drink a lot of mineral water and herbal teas, and in the semi-modernized but still healthy societies, they tend to drink a lot of fruit juice and vegetable juice. Any of these things are far healthier than soft drinks or coffee. You can also review my video, Fluoride and Aspartame, for my thoughts on drinking water in general. The next very important thing that I think most people can do to greatly improve their diet is to radically modify the types and amount of meat that they eat. In the United States, most people eat a lot of meat, and this, in my opinion, is partially because they're so nutrient deficient from every other source. If you're eating nothing but junk food and white flour, then you're hardly getting any nutrients compared to someone that's eating fruit and nuts or whole grains. And next, in modern society, when people do eat meat, it's usually the lowest quality. You can review my video, Food and Health and Intelligence. Since meat is such a concentrated source of nutrients and toxins, I think it's particularly important to get meat from healthy sources and to prepare it properly. First of all, let me cover fish, which makes up a much bigger component of the overall meat intake for most traditional societies than it does in America. I know in America there's a lot of negative buzz around fish because of PCB and mercury contamination. I think it's a little odd that the media focuses on this so much and yet ignores other sources of mercury like dental fillings. The simple way to minimize contaminants in fish is to do what traditional societies do, to eat smaller fish and fish further down the food chain, things like herring. Another big problem with seafood nowadays is that a larger and larger percentage is farmed, and in my opinion this isn't healthy either. With salmon, for example, they add pink dye to farmed salmon so that the gray-colored flesh turns pink like a normal salmon. If it's having this big an impact on the coloring of the fish, then it's probably having an impact on the nutritional value as well. Traditional societies often, if not usually, go out of their way to prepare fish raw. This isn't just with sashimi. Sometimes they prepare ceviche or some type of pickled fish. And it sounds complicated, but it's really not. For example, to make pickled fish, you just buy herring or mackerel. You put it in some type of natural raw vinegar, like Bragg's apple cider vinegar. You put in some type of sweetener, like sugar or honey, and onions and some spices, and it's really a fairly simple thing to make. Ceviche is even easier. You just chop up the fish and put it with lemon juice and tomatoes and onions and cilantro. You have to practice a little bit, maybe watch somebody that already knows how to do it, but it's not difficult to do. Sashimi is even easier to prepare. You just buy sashimi grade fish from the store. When you eat fish raw, it has a lot more nutritional value, probably double the nutritional value. About half of the B vitamins, half of the taurine, and other essential amino acids are destroyed by cooking, and most of the DHA and EPA and essential fatty acids are destroyed by high cooking, the way we do with most of our fish nowadays. And this is why I believe most traditional societies, as I said, go out of their way to prepare fish raw. Looks like I won't get to cover everything I wanted to, but one last recommendation. I think that it's much healthier and also more ethical to eat any animal product organic versus factory farmed. There are a number of reasons for this, and I go into this and a lot of other topics in my book, so unfortunately I didn't get to cover everything here, but you can always buy the book for $1.25 and learn a lot more.